Hi there, I'm back and I'm going to be talking about just some helpful tips for beginners who are doing small one-act play type of things. Personally, I do one-act play because that's what my school offers, but anything to like community theaters, anything that's like on a small stage, not Broadway, not musicals, that's in another category, more for like small little organizations and stuff like that that probably don't have mics, who have not necessarily a big, opera. My first tip I have that you can never go wrong with is project. Like, there is nothing wrong with being too loud because there are always going to be people who sit in the front who can hear you just fine and people in the back who might not be able to hear you as fine. So you should always strive to be as loud as you can. There's a fine line between screaming and being loud. You don't want to scream every single one of your lines, even like say, okay, for instance, look over there, but my shoe is not tied. You're gonna say, look over there, but my shoe is not tied. That's not yelling, but it's not being too quiet. And that's, right now I'm being kind of quiet, but on a stage that would be fine. Taking it from your diaphragm is, I might make a video on how to project maybe sometime in the future. So my second tip is, most of the time, I think this is just like a general rule, but I'm not sure if it's like a UIL thing, which is, in the state of Texas, we have what's called UIL, which is basically like, I think it's like a whole bunch of set of rules for whatever activity you compete in. But basically, I've always had this drilled into my brain, do not turn your back to the audience. Because not only is the fact that your voice is not going to the audience, but it's going somewhere else, but also they can't read your lips, which is a huge part of acting because, as I said, like those people in the back, they might not be able to hear you even though you're projecting as loud as you can. So a big part of, and they might not be able to see your lips, they might not, but still, no matter where they are and what they're hearing and what they're seeing, the basic shape of how your lips are moving, they can kind of pick up what you're saying, like they can make it out. It's a bad idea in general. I'm not sure if this is an overall rule or if it's just like a UIL Texas type of thing, but I mean, I also did this in Louisiana and I was also told not to turn my back to the audience. So that's just kind of like a basic rule, and I might make another video on like how to work around turning your back to the audience, because say if you're on stage and someone is upstage and you want to turn to speak to them, but you can't really because you're not supposed to turn your back to the audience isn't going to notice if you're talking to this person and you're really facing this way. Like, it looks weird right now, but while the play is acting out and stuff like that, maybe I'll have an example in another video or something, but like the audience isn't gonna notice. But even so, if it is an experienced actor or actress, they will see that you're not turning your back to the audience and they will acknowledge it and it'll be a good. Number 3, always react. If someone is saying a line, even if it's not to you, even if it's on the other side of the stage, still be reacting to it because like you know what that line is, you know what they're about to say. Don't just stand there and be like, yep, she said that, good job, you said it, get off the stage now. No. Like, okay, for instance, in the play I'm doing right now, A Doctor in Spite of Himself, I did a video on that before, on like a little run through of me practicing my lines, which was really rough. So what happens in this scene is that the dad of the girl who's sick is introducing the girl to the doctor, and so the dad is talking like, oh, this is my only daughter. I couldn't bear it if she's sick anymore. Like, you have to help her. And the doctor's like, I order that she does not die without a doctor's prescription. And of course, if this was like, this isn't gonna happen in real life, but if it was, Maids aren't just gonna sit there like they're saying their lines. They'd be like, oh, that's, in my mind, it's like, oh, that's so sweet. Like, that's only daughter. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, doctor's prescription. That's very, very smart. Yes, she mustn't die without a doctor's prescription. You know, stuff like that. So always be reacting, even if it's not your line. Tip number 4, I guess. So I have a really bad problem with this. Do not stare out into the audience. Like, I do this so much. Like, I'm looking and I'm like, okay, who's all in the crowd? Let me see. Oh, I see my mom right there. Okay, there's my theater teacher. Oh gosh, those are the judges. Those are the judges. Like, this is so bad. I mean, this is a personal tip, like, from my experience. I'm sure a lot of people are great at looking at the audience and staying in character, but me, I completely transform into, oh my gosh, what's she doing here? Is she judging me? Oh my goodness, what should I do? Like, I get nervous, and don't do that. Don't do that. I do that all the time, and it's so bad. And so a trick that I personally do is I look at the walls instead of like the people are down here, and I look at the walls and I say my lines to the walls. Like, it messes me up if I look at people. But again, that is just a personal tip that I struggle with. I'm sure there are tons of people who are able to look at the audience and be perfectly fine. So if you're one of those people, congratulations, I'm not you. So tip number 5, I think, memorize your lines. I mean, of course, it's easier said than done. You could get like the lead role, or you could have the lead role and have so many lines. Like, we did the Count of Monte Cristo my freshman year, and Monte Cristo has a lot of lines to memorize, and it's very hard to get everything in order. For me, especially whenever I have a big paragraph to say, it's just hard for me to remember like the order of it. Rather, because like whenever you're memorizing lines from like a dialogue, it's like, oh, you say this, I say this as a response. You say this, I say this. You say this, I say this. But when you're speaking like a paragraph, like I'm the prologue for A Doctor in Spite of Himself right now, and I have a hard time, like, I know my lines. I just have a hard time putting them together and piecing them together, if that makes sense. So, some tips I have for memorizing lines, I might make a video on this, I'm not sure, is like always, like no matter where you are, always try to be memorizing them. You can take a picture of them on your phone, you can bring your script to like the toilet or something like that. While you're driving, just try to go over what you know. I do that all the time. Every single time I drive to school, I rehearse my big paragraphs that I have, and just to make sure like I have it down. And always know your cues. Like, it's not that hard. I'm bad at this too, because maybe I'm not paying attention, but so I'm also guilty. But it adds time, and it does not look good when you miss your cues. So always get your cues right. And this also pertains back to the reacting. When you're having a conversation with someone, like even now, so say if I were talking to you personally, on a personal level, you'd be nodding your head and acknowledging that you hear me, and maybe say like, yeah, yeah, right, yeah. See, that's reacting. And so in a dialogue, you want to always be like that. Like, while I'm talking, you react to me, and then right away you say something, because the human brain doesn't take a minute to process what you say. Like, while I'm talking right now, you're thinking, oh, yeah. So if I were saying like, I want a peanut, you already know what I'm about to say. That's how fast the human brain works. So, like, in any scenario ever, in any dialogue, you're processing what they're saying. So right away when they finish their lines, you want to say yours right then. So it's literally like you're talking. But that's what it should be. You know, you are talking. You're talking. The last tip I have is improv. You need to know how to improv in order to become a good actor or actress, just for the fact of the in case this goes wrong, in case they don't say that this specific line, in case the bookshelf falls over. You need to know how to roll with it. You can't just, do not ignore it. Do not ignore something like that. You can't, okay, especially if something malfunctions, don't ignore it. Do not ignore it. Because that's the worst thing, because they know that that's not supposed to happen. But if you acknowledge it and you say if you're in the middle of the Addams Family and you're Wednesday Addams and Fester accidentally knocks over the table or something like that, like on accident while he's getting up, and the entire cast is shocked because this isn't part of the script. You need that table. Like, what are you gonna do? And you're Wednesday Addams and you're like, what the heck is gonna go? I don't know. What? There's a whole audience watching. I don't want to act. I don't want to, what's gonna happen? Close the curtain. No, you can't do that. Say something like, oh my goodness, Uncle Fester, why would you knock over the table, you silly goof? Let's all pick it up. And then so you all pick it up and get back to your seats, and Uncle Fester says his stuff. Always know how to improv. And, that's in case, my example was like if furniture or something like that goes wrong. But what if somebody messes up their lines and you have no idea what to say, and you're like, my next line isn't going to make sense because their line wasn't what they were supposed to say. Okay, for example, say if there's this whole fight scene going on. I'm kind of thinking of West Side Story right now, and I don't really know the story that well, but I know someone shoots Tony, but what if she's just saying a bunch of threats, so she seems very mean and threatening and forgets to ask why, and then someone volunteers and says, because he's a bad guy. So it's literally like, Tony, oh no, what happened? I'll kill you. Whoever did this, I'll kill you. Because he's a bad guy. No, you have to add in that line. Say if she did forget her why, and it was just a bunch of threats being hurled, and she forgets her why, and you are the next line. You are the person who says, because he's a bad guy. So you could say, I did it. I killed him because he is a bad guy. Like, you have to know how to work off the top of your brain, because, theater is live. When it's live, it's a lot difficult. It's more difficult to, hide the fact that something went wrong. Whereas, like, in a movie or a TV show, you can just cut it and pick up where you left off, But in live theater, you can't cut it out, and you have to acknowledge the fact that something happened, and then you have to try to pick up where you left off. So say if your play is going like here, and then it drops right here. You have to build your way up and then continue. You can't just be like, here, cut, here. That's how a movie works. No, this is live theater. So you have to gradually work your way back up to where you did leave off. And that is all of the tips and tricks I have for newbies acting. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I know I'm not posting as much as I said I would every day, but I've been really busy recently, so I am going to definitely try to post more. If I don't, I will see you guys in my next video.